Hi there. I'm Smita Murthy, Managing Partner at Opencliff Partners. We're a product advisory and consulting firm. We provide product advisory and enable value creation throughout the product lifecycle for technology and tech-enabled businesses. We partner with investors and boards, founders and CEOs, product leaders, and individuals, meeting them where they're at in the value creation process. This podcast series focuses on cross functional perspectives on what it takes to build successful products across domains and industries. I interview leaders from various functions with whom I've worked with to build and launch great products and the lessons we learned along the way. Today, I'm excited to host my former boss and colleague from McAfee, Mohan Atreya.
Hi,
Mohan
Smita.
is hi Mohan. Mohan is the Chief Product Officer at Rafe Systems. He's a seasoned product leader with over 25 years of experience for both early stage SaaS companies and high growth software businesses within large organizations, like when we worked at McAfee together. Prior to Rafe Systems, Mohan was the VP of products at Okta. Mohan earned his master's in engineering from National University of Singapore. And in his spare time, he does something very fun, enjoys exploring the night sky with his robotic telescopes. Mohan, welcome. I'm so happy to have you on the show. And I can't wait for our audience to learn all things product leadership and building great products from you. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Great to be here and good to talk to you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, absolutely. I still had your number saved from all those years ago. So
Exactly.
I was like, oh yeah, I still have your number. Anyway, let's start by, why don't you share a fun fact about yourself?
Yeah. About 25 years ago, there was this big episode about Mars being closest to planet Earth, and that got me into telescopes. And it's been a bug that it's still there with me. It's an expensive hobby, but it's very fulfilling. And over the course of time, I've kind of learned. I mean, the term they use is called Star Walk. So all you need, just like we use Google Maps, and if this is here, you can go here, turn here. I can do that on the night sky. Kind of trained myself over the years. So I just need a clear patch of sky, and I can find a lot of things. And this is actually a competition that a lot of people in this hobby do. Like, how many things can you find very quickly?
Oh, that's
It's
interesting.
fun. Yeah.
Awesome. And of course, just like we were speaking right before we started off, this is a beautiful month to observe the night sky. I'm definitely no expert. I'm an amateur, but even in the Northeast, we've been having clear skies, and I call it the parade of the planets that we've been able to
Yeah.
observe with the naked eye. So I can only
Yeah.
imagine how beautiful it is with your telescopes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's you used a fantastic word. I think the people in this space, in this hobby, they call it planetary alignment, but I think the words you use are actually better. I should steal that and use
Go
it.
for it.
Yeah.
I actually feel, sorry, not to, I digress, but I feel like lately we've had some very interesting planetary and astronomical events. In fact, we saw some of the Northern Lights, not quite the greens, but we saw like more of the pinks and the purples, closer to the reds in October. So it
Oh yeah.
almost felt like a blessing from above to have
That's right.
such a joy to see something with your naked eye from our front yard and backyard, and it doesn't get better than that.
Oh yeah.
So
Totally.
very
I mean, I think the bigger thing is, we all get so busy with work. It dominates our life, and then you need stuff around it to complete your life. And yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I may pick your brain a little bit more about this at some point in time. It sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
But let's get on to the show. So this podcast focuses on cross-functional perspectives. I know you've been a product leader for a long time. Our paths crossed when we were at McAfee. And what I remember most about you, Mohan, is just this humility and the smile that you always have had when you're working. And I think I appreciate that a lot in people because it's your authentic self. And it's great to see that you are the same person after all these years. I know it's been a while since we worked together. So tell me about what you remember about when we worked together.
This is a great point. I've been thinking about this a lot ever since we talked a few days back. There are some companies which tend to hit scale. I think both of us are fortunate to be at a company that was operating at a pretty significant scale. Of course, there are B2C companies these days that operate at an insane scale, but this was a B2B product. Being able to ship products that would roll into the largest of enterprises, touching millions of users, laptops, making sure that you don't make decisions that would land up impacting millions of users, makes you think differently. You cannot necessarily always have the craziest of ideas and roll this out because you have to be careful about not impacting these users. I think that was so a lot of our thinking, I think, was more around that, right? Like how do we build the thing in a manner that doesn't impact users? The other thing is all about distribution. I think a lot of people who live outside B2B sometimes don't realize that, and many of us kind of maybe in the early days take it for granted until we go to a smaller company in our lives. Distribution is essentially like you build this thing, but then how do you get it in the hands of people? That is such an insane problem to solve, and many product companies just think you wave a wand and it happens, and it's maybe the most humbling challenge in at least in my career. That's the distribution has been the most humbling experience.
And especially with a great point, and you're absolutely right. We took it for granted because there was the broader organization that had set the channels up for distribution. And our job was a little bit more to focus on building the best product, highest quality product, ship it on time. And there was a marketing engine that was available that was building all the collateral for it. And the channels were established. But, one thing I remember, so if you recall, I had multiple products in our portfolio, and one of them was SaaS endpoint protection. And I always fondly remember the fact that this was before marketplaces were a thing. So we thought we were uber cool to really be part of the telco marketplace. When that became a significant route to market for SaaS endpoint protection, because we said, hey, you're a small business, you're trying to get your internet set up, you want all the machines protected and so on. Just this comes along with those laptops and your internet connectivity. So it was sort of, the idea was a one-stop shop where you could get everything. And that became a significant route to market for us, where we had different telco partnerships we established, working with what did we call them? Partner product managers, I think.
Possibly. I am blanking out on that. But yes, that's such a interesting route to market. The customer that you're alluding to, Smita, is such a fascinating one, right? This was the days when you could not download an app, and so and there's this big chasm between little dentist who is buying 5 computers is being helped by the local guy or gal helping him with the tech. May not even be aware they need endpoint security, right? So that person who was helping them with a laptop setup, firewalls, routers, and all those things, endpoint was just yet another thing that the person had to check the box on, make the recommendation, and it has to be affordable enough, easy enough to deploy and operate. If any of those were not true,
Yeah.
And then the buying process, if I had to go do something complicated,
Yeah.
game over. So
Yeah.
that's why the telco stuff came in, like along with my dial-up or my high-speed internet.
Yeah.
It came along with it, and was so easy to get going because we didn't have, you can't click a button and get it through an app store at that time in those
Yeah.
days. So that
Yeah.
was fascinating. The things you had to do.
Yep.
Again, the goal was distribution, because the minute they activate it, you could at least clock revenue at that time, and the friction was enormous.
Yeah, but the principles carry forward, Mohan, because if you think about it, that way we never called it customer experience those days, but that's what this is, right?
Yeah.
To create those frictionless customer experiences, and knowing that persona really, really well. Who are you serving?
Yeah.
Right? And really thinking about, hey, okay, what's going to make the dentist, for example, their life easy when they want to get their dental office set up with a couple of people who are front desk manning the front desk, and dentists are logging whatever findings into the system. So yeah, no, absolutely. I think, and I think it's that frictionless customer experience. We didn't call it that then, but that's what it is. That's what we were trying to do with the product that we had.
Yeah, exactly. And I think right now you and I have the luxury of retrospect, as in we're looking back at this and we're able to use, if you can trying to figure out what do we exactly do and why. And when you are in the trenches at that time, fighting that battle, you may not necessarily realize how you can categorize this into a particular task or something else. I mean, you're just trying to eliminate friction.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we can talk about this a lot, but I think one of the biggest challenges that we had in that particular product was the fact that it had adjacent products that were similar. We also had a consumer product, which did the OEM route with different partners, right? And we also had the enterprise product, which had similar capabilities and different management dashboards. So going back to your point of frictionless customer experience, to the dentist, they're not looking to tinker with, I want this setting to be this way, I want that setting to be that way. It's just work. Just make it work. And tell me I'm protected. Just tell me when I'm not protected, right? That's the only thing they care to know. So some good lessons from
exactly. The point you're making about overlapping products that might confuse the market, and especially the distribution channel, because for them it's like, well, what do I recommend this user, right? I seem to have 3 things from the same company that kind of sort of sound the same, and that is another challenge that a lot of companies do face, because these are different cohorts, they're different kind of users. Yes, there's some overlap, and the last thing you want inside a company is to have infighting. So you have to have very clear lines and boundaries.
Yep, absolutely.
You're 100% right. That was a challenge, and I interestingly saw that again in my career at yet another company. And some companies do a really good job at that. Some companies struggle with that. A lot of it because of how they're organized, etc.
And I think building upon that point, I think when you come to work in smaller companies, that's less of an issue, because you don't have the luxury of all these overlapping products, right? You have a set of products, and you do the best for each product line. Interesting. Just comparing and contrasting different sized companies and the growth challenges in different sized companies.
Absolutely. That makes sense. Smaller companies, it can be very refreshing, because you may not, no one may know who you are. You may not even have a brand. You may just have one product. So and because nobody has time, there's no politics, there's nothing inside the company. It's like you're in survival mode most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that's a good segue to my next question, which is, Tell me about a B2B SaaS, enterprise SaaS product that you have helped start, build, sell, grow that you're fond of, and what made it
Yeah,
special.
yeah. This may be also a good chance to maybe kind of reflect on the journey a little bit. So McAfee is a big shop, and my next stop was at Okta, which was at that time, and now they are a behemoth. But at that time, I think there were 300 people or something like that. Um, Good company, but they were growing really fast. And the next stop for me beyond Okta was, I wanted to, having lived in the San Francisco Bay Area for 20 plus years, if you're not really rolled up your sleeves and done a startup, well, that would be an embarrassment and a shame, perhaps, at least for me, in my mindset. So I said, I'm going to join a company that at that time, 6 years ago, had no product, no revenue, and no customers. So they're starting from scratch. Just a bunch of smart people, driven people, and a bunch of ideas. We don't know which of these will take off. So that was a fantastic moment, because you start realizing that the clarity hits you very quickly that just because you have good tech and a good idea, it means nothing to the market. It's very blunt and brutal at that time, right? So you have to learn how to articulate what it does in very simple terms. And this is also the time when, now they call it like the TikTok moment. Like, if you can't answer that in 30 seconds, well, people lose attention. And things were also moving online in a big way. And, that's when COVID happened. So we had to learn a lot of lessons, like, how am I going to sell this remotely? How am I going to do a POC remotely when no one's coming in anymore, right? Things are, of course, changing again now, but so there were things we didn't exactly plan for. And I think it kind of benefited us, because even the very big boys, the massive companies who had brands and all that, even they couldn't walk into the office and have meetings and all that at that time. So it kind of leveled the playing field in many ways. So that helped us kind of outrun, because every startup has to have at least one superpower, and most of them have to have a shot. The first is, of course, a good product with some interesting tech, and the other one is you had to be an execution machine. You had to be maniacal about getting stuff done. I think that's a big culture shift that I guess, as an early person in the company, you land up doing it instinctively, but then how do you get everyone else who comes after you to share that same philosophy? Because startups, they sound cool and all that, but they're very brutal, very hard.
It's a lot of hard work. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people don't appreciate that until they are in those shoes, and it's fun. It comes at a significant investment you have to make. So that was a journey. So this company I'm at right now, maybe I can talk to it at a reasonable level, because it's fresh in memory. And maybe I can talk about Okta, because Okta was, it was just at that time a crazy scaling machine. The problems we faced there were different from the problems I faced at Raphi, right? Again, another SaaS product. These days, we are very focused on what I would call as AI infrastructure orchestration, and at the same time, AI infrastructure can also be AI ML tools. So essentially, the problem people have is, if you're a data scientist or a Gen AI developer, which is kind of the hot thing these days, you need access to an environment where you can do your stuff. And this is not some general, you can't do it on a laptop, right? It's just not possible. And these are very expensive resources. So people they can't give it to you and say, do whatever you want. So they typically give it to you, loan it to you, take it back, reclaim it, because they're giving it to many, many people. So how do you do that in the most cost-effective manner? This is a challenge for a lot of companies. They don't know how to do that. And they know it's existential, because if they don't get on this bandwagon, their entire businesses can potentially be disrupted in the next 4 or 5 years, right? So they are hungry to get going. This is kind of what we do. So the same philosophies we learned when we were at McAfee, the same things kind of, it's like deja vu in some ways. Which is like, can I just log in and get access to stuff? If I click a button, can I get access to stuff? If something goes wrong, well, take care of it. Don't come and tell me, read this manual and do 50 things. So in many ways, the learnings that you and I had at McAfee, many of the same things apply here, except it's a slightly different lens, slightly different tech. And then now, because it's SaaS, we can also do fascinating things, which a lot of people don't realize is possible in traditional on-premises products. We do also have an on-premises product, but the SaaS side, we can do some really fascinating things, like we can exactly know where people are stuck. In fact, we may know people are going to have issues even before they know they're going to have issues, right? And then we can fix it or call them and help them out, right? So the opportunity to deliver a mind-blowing customer experience exists in SaaS, which it's kind of hard to pull off in other segments, in non-SaaS environments.
So can I ask you, how are you? Like, what kind of things is Rafe doing in the products to know where they're stuck? I'm guessing some sort of instrumentation is built in, so you know exactly where they are. But like, are you using predictive analytics to kind of anticipate a failure point, or how are you doing that?
Yeah. So instead of kind of throwing an AI moniker around it, we started with something very basic. And I think we've been doing this for even before this Gen AI craze took off, right? Yeah. So the thinking is, the first is, you want to create these well-known pathways, right? Just like, you drive out of your driveway, you turn right, turn left, there's a road there, you don't drive on the pavement. You follow some rules and you instinctively follow those. Similarly, even in the product, you can provide these somewhat guided experiences. So, and again, it doesn't have to be just one way, my way or the highway. It can be a few forks, but at least well understood, well tested pathways. Because then, what customers are looking for is somewhat of a prescriptive experience, at least in the beginning. So that is really important. A lot of companies do not invest in that, and then it's too complicated for the user because they go down 50 different rabbit holes. Yeah. So that's the first investment one's got to make. Now, once you do that, then you can instrument it, right? Then you can monitor, well, where did the person get stuck and why? And because you're then following them in that pathway, just like how Google Maps tracks you. You're here. Yeah. It's the same philosophy, right? Nothing fancy. And then at every one of these places, when they do get stuck, we can intervene either via automation or via a human. So there are a bunch of technologies. Now, we relegate AI, ML to the things we cannot easily predict, like, things that go out of this. Like if someone's truly driving on the pavement, as an example, what do you do now, right? Yep. That's when we leverage these things that are beyond the simple rules. But that's usually 5%, 10%, not the norm. Not the norm. So that's kind of where we are. Yeah.
That's great. And just to, again, for me, I can talk product all day, every day, but just like I'm sure you can. So when you said the customers want these well-known pathways, are you doing some sort of UX research or UX development, even though these are data scientists or Gen AI, I don't know, the AI ML engineers, as it were, they still need an intuitive application that they can use to do the high quality work that they're doing. So tell me a little bit about that.
That's right. Let's just take a simple example, right? So if I'm a data scientist, I probably have 3 or 4 preferred tools that are considered the norm in the market, right? If I'm a developer, I probably use an IDE that's, like VS Code or something like that. And the same thing, like you said, browsers, well, Chrome owns 85, 90% of the world, right? So you optimize for the things that people use. So that's number one. So you're right now in familiar territory with them, right? Like they immediately have comfort that you probably understood what my life is like. Then Then comes to the daily tasks they do, right? There are in our lives, we have automated a lot of things, right? Like, we probably we have a pressure cooker, we have, I don't know, a pump at home, we have, flick a switch, the light comes on. We've
Yeah.
automated so many things. Similarly, a data scientist or a developer, they do a bunch of things. A bunch of it is drudgery. They don't like doing it, but they have to do it. And then if you streamline that, they're actually appreciative of that, as long as you do a good job, right? Like if you flick a switch and the light doesn't come on, well, you get frustrated, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So stuff like that, right? So we land up taking care of a lot of the drudgery stuff. I didn't make it into a flick the switch kind of an experience, right? Or it's just there. Like you walk in, the lights on kind of an experience.
Mhm.
Then they're able to focus on the stuff they actually care about. Because in the end, you think about it, it's all about their job and
Yeah.
what they're doing, right? If they can do it, if they can focus on it and do a better job at that, they feel happy. And they're looking for that moment, right? Can I get them to that point where they're not looking around saying, hey, that's my switch that I got to flick and put on the light. It's already on. Can I get them to that moment? That
Yeah.
is what we look for. And the
Yeah.
magic of SaaS is you can actually watch that happening, right? Like, did we slow them down? Are they frustrated clicking around all over the place?
That's right.
Because you have instrumentation, you can actually kind of get that feedback.
Yeah.
And you can get this at some reasonable scale, so you can kind of put even people in cohorts, because some people are very advanced, some people are in the other end of the spectrum. So how do you optimize? How do you put people in cohorts? This is where I think the art of product management, I think, is you have a little bit of art, a little bit of science, and it's a combination of that I think eventually works. It can't
Yeah.
be all science.
Agreed.
There's a human aspect to it too. Yeah.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Mm.
So what kind of metrics do you track to say we had a successful product launch, or like our
Yeah.
customers are using it, or they had the most frictionless experience? All
Yeah.
these topics that we've talked about, like what are key metrics that are important to you?
Yeah. So we, of course, every product makes a claim, right? Like, and you want to make sure that that claim is delivered without complexity, right? So, and I'm going to take an example that we all probably deal with on a daily basis, maybe 100 times a day. And I'm going to use this as an example to kind of shine a light on, if it were not that way, how frustrating it would be, right? Using an Android or an iPhone, how many times do you unlock your phone?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, most of us are doing it 100 times a day, right?
Yeah.
Or more, maybe. Imagine if that was laden with friction. I mean, we probably use Touch ID, Face ID, or one of these technologies that it's frictionless, but and it's instantaneous. But if that was painful, you would probably be upset. I would be, at least, right?
I would be
On a
too.
similar note here, when I do a product launch here, what I'm looking for is, what is that one thing we were trying to optimize for? As an example, if a data scientist comes in here, logs in, and they say, hey, I want a Jupyter notebook. I'm just taking an example. I click a button. How fast can I get it to them? Does it have everything that they possibly could need to get going? And right now we're talking about seconds. Minutes are too much. And that's kind of where the market is. And everyone's expectations are like, hey, I want it now, right? People have become extremely demanding for the right reasons.
Yeah.
So we have to do a lot of gymnastics behind the scenes to deliver that experience. Things like, I'm going to talk a little bit of tech, like using warm pools, being able to like pause stuff and wake them up instead of constantly reinstalling things. I mean, again, nothing fancy. It's just, how can the more time engineers have to think about that problem, and when they have clarity that this is the experience that has to be delivered, then they find an answer. And then the company, of course, needs focus on the ability to focus on that. Otherwise, you get distracted by 20 other things. A lot of my job I see as making sure the company continues to have that focus. And the way I try to achieve that is convey some of these stories inside, in my words, good experiences, bad experiences, so you can shine a light on what the day in the life of the user was like, right?
Yeah.
'Cause I think that's what engineers are missing. That's why that's kind of what they're looking for, right? They need that so they can say, oh, yeah. And in our world, we call them user stories sometimes. They sometimes even give a name like Anna or I don't know, Jim.
Yeah,
And
sure.
I, I think did we do that when we were at McAfee? I vaguely remember us doing
We
something like
went
that.
through a very painful
Mm, mm,
transition from waterfall to agile. I
yeah,
remember thinking, oh God, this
yeah,
changes my life so much. I vehemently was like,
yeah,
it's uncomfortable.
yeah,
But that's the norm now. And
yeah,
in
yeah,
that,
yeah,
when you're talking
yeah.
about Scrum, these are the
Mm,
things that you're doing. You're defining personas,
correct.
you're giving the persona a name, describing a
Exactly.
day in their lives, and all of that good
Mm.
stuff. Yeah, for
Hey,
sure.
hey, Smita, you may want to cut out this part because there's some kind of a phone ringing.
That's okay.
Yeah.
We're fine. We're fine.
Mm.
Yeah, let's keep going. Okay. Great. Tell me the biggest challenge you've faced in your product career. And if you could do something differently, what would you do differently?
Yeah. I think maybe the biggest challenge I had in my career was where I was put in a position where uh, it was a little political situation inside. There's some infighting at that time. Um, Not too different. It was actually a very big company. I don't want to name them, but what they had four products that were kind of solving the same problem in some ways. It's like a like Venn
Yep.
diagram on Venn diagram.
Yep.
And I was kind of sandwiched in between. I was a technology provider for a bunch of these products, an enabler for those products, and what I got stuck with was um, there were games being played that the thing I was managing should only be available on one of these things. Effectively, it becomes like they're icing on the cake,
Mm.
and therefore they could charge command a premium in the market at the expense of their sister products.
Mm.
So at that time, I realized that you know I'm going to spend more time battling inside the company rather than making a good product for the customer.
Right.
Um, and this is a good example of where I think a product person can't really help. It's outside their control, right? And this is maybe a little cultural or maybe situational, but yeah, as a product person, you don't want to be in this spot. And if you
Yeah, we
do
just
find
want to
yourself in the
build good
spot, just
product. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's not worth the time of that in those kind of situations. So
Yeah.
that, yeah, I had, again, life is strange. Sometimes you find yourself with these curveballs. This is one of mine.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and yeah.
No, and I'm very glad you brought that up because I've had guests um, from product who do product, and most people shy away from calling this out. I think
Mm,
anyone who's spent any significant amount of time in product, I think most of us, we stay the course because it's a passion, right? Like, we love
mm,
building product, we love solving problems,
mm,
and we are generally good with people because you have to work cross
mm,
functionally all the time, right?
mm,
But I think the politics is one thing that not all of us are great at navigating,
mm,
because we'd rather not deal with it. We'd rather focus on building a great product, a great frictionless customer experience, and have our customers love our product.
yeah.
And no, I totally understand that. And I think if someone's looking at a career in product, I think this is an important message for them to hear, that this does exist, and you need to know how you navigate it. What's your plan for navigating it,
Oh,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So for the audience, I think, thank you for sharing that. I
Mm,
appreciate it, and I'm sure the listeners will as well. um,
yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I can also kind of, it took me 3 months to figure that out. Because a lot of our work, Smita, is about talking to people, understanding, listening, asking questions, and you try and connect the dots to the extent you can. And some of this only comes out a little later because these are like unsaid, right? These are larger strategies, sometimes driven by individuals at these companies. In many cases, these are like BU boundaries, right?
Yep.
And by the time you get wind of it, it might take you a few months. And what do you do then?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I will add to that the higher you go, sometimes when you're at a junior level, someone else is shielding you from this. You don't know about it. But the higher you go, the more exposed you are to it. And I think most definitely in larger companies, because of, like you were saying, like it could be BU boundaries, it could be power struggles between two leaders, whatever. But I think it exists in smaller and mid-sized companies too. And I think it's an important lesson to learn as you grow, to be in tune to the fact that it exists. If you put a bunch of people together, some sort of um, politics or some sort of friction can exist because we're all different people. And then just to acknowledge it and have a plan for how you want to navigate it. I think
Exactly.
that's the most important thing to
Yeah.
learn as you grow as you grow in this
Yeah.
career.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I want to talk about AI, Gen AI, agentic AI. I just love how you've said, great, now there's a moniker for it. Yes, there's a new name for it. It's very glamorous. Everybody's talking about it, but how you have been doing this for a long time without all the glamour, or giving it that name, or really just writing that word. But tell me, but I do believe AI, Gen AI, now agentic AI is fundamentally changing how we think about building products. So tell me, at Rafe, like what are the changes you're seeing and how you're positioning yourselves for success?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So we've been, I guess, because of the space we play in, we've been kind of obviously forced to be at the cutting edge of some of these, right? So it's an expected thing, especially since the kind of people we are working with. So about a year and a half ago, we recognized a problem, and we realized that there's probably no way we could solve this problem through a traditional mechanism, right? Traditional as in it was, again, in the grand scheme of things, it was a user experience problem, right? Our challenge with user experience. And we had tried every other possible way, the guided pathways, there's everything. And we still were stuck. We said, what are we going to do about it? And this is when, interestingly, Gen AI kind of popped into the scene, and maybe little too early, I think, in some ways, perhaps, in hindsight. But we decided that we could build a chatbot in our product, because what was happening was, the theory was, when people would have issues, they would land up talking to a solutions architect saying, hey, how do I solve this complex problem if I'm an infrastructure engineer, right? How do I make this decision? It was a very nuanced decision, right? And our thinking at that time was, hey, can we bottle this up somehow, where maybe I can take one of these smart solution architects and take their knowledge and make it available in the console that they could talk to, and that would guide them through the process, remembering things along the way. The key thing is the context, right? Not simple Q&A. So we introduced that. It's an in-product, in-console chatbot.
That's cool.
And it basically, today it's passive in the sense you ask it questions, it would give you answers, and it's learning based on a bunch of content that our architects and our documentation experts put together. What has helped our customers with is shorten it's eliminated the findability problem, information findability problem. Otherwise, people would go to Google and search, and not everything is indexed properly, or it's presented in a not obvious, apparent manner. So it helps them with that, brings it as if one of the architects would explain it. So that's helped. But that's result opened the door for a set of challenges at that time we did not realize, right? And I think everyone doing these chatbots and Gen AI is going to hit it, which is, so Smita, if you're an infrastructure engineer, the kind of questions you are asking, right? You may not want that to be visible to everyone else. You want us to remember the history of the questions I've been asking, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So now suddenly you have these multi-tenancy problems I got to deal with. Like I had to remember your history.
Yeah.
The 1,000 other people who product users, I had to remember them. Where do I store it? How do I secure it?
Right.
As a user, you would get frustrated. I asked this question yesterday.
And you don't remember. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So these are not Gen AI problems, right? Not directly.
Yeah.
But they severely can impact the user experience if we don't address them. So that opened the door for some things at that time we had not contemplated, but we had taken a first step. And then just kind of, and again, for the Gen AI product people or people trying to bring Gen AI into their product, these are some of the challenges you're going to have. Now, on the other side, we also have the flip side use case, which is issues that you may have had and solved. How can I share that with everyone else so I can lift all boats?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if you look at products like ChatGPT, etc., then they probably do this very well, right? Like any issues they learn from one person, they're not going to make the same mistake again and again, right? They're going to learn and fix it. So how do I make the system intelligent based on my interactions with you so that the next person has a slightly better experience, right?
Well,
but at the same time, not lose data.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So that delicate balance between privacy, security, and learning.
Yeah. Very cool.
Without leaking stuff. Yeah. So I think everyone's going to face. And I don't see a product in the market that does this magically. Everyone sells you engines. There's no car on the market right now. It's everyone's building one.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to hit this. Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very cool. That sounds fascinating. All right, Mohan, lots of good conversation. I'm sure you have some book recommendations for our audience. So I love getting recommendations. So I figured I'll share that with our audience on any book recommendations that you have that, it could be about products. It could be anything that motivates you, inspires you, that you want to share.
Yeah, I literally just ordered this. This is something I haven't read yet, but I'm chomping at the bits to get it. Let me tell you in a second. So I'm waiting for this thing to show up. I'm a science geek. So I'm a huge fan of Richard Feynman. There's this book where he has helped dumb down physics. It's called Essentials of Physics, 6 Easy Pieces. It's something that many people have recommended to me, and I usually hesitate to buy these deep books because it's hard to explain these complicated concepts in simple terms, and there are very few people who can do that. Feynman, of course, most of us know. Most of us are STEM folks, so we would have, of course, heard his lectures and everything. He's great at that. So I just didn't know how I didn't know this book before.
That's pretty cool. My son's a physics major, so he may be like, let me take a look at that. That's great.
He goes to Princeton, right?
Yeah, he does. And when he said he wants to do physics at Princeton, we're like, huh? That's gonna be hard. But that's him. So we're like, right now, we're just thankful that he's found what he loves doing, and he's really enjoying it. He's like, there's no other major anyone should be doing. Okay.
Yeah. Kids are another learning experience. They're your product.
Those are my 2 best products. My two kids. So, any other book recommendations, Mohan?
No, these are I'm a lot into. I have a son who is coincidentally also into physics and science and all of that in a big way.
Yeah.
So I'm reading these so I can keep up with him.
Good,
Yeah,
good for you.
yeah,
Yeah, I leave that to my husband. I'm like, you keep
mm,
up with him. I'm good.
yeah, yeah.
So great. Hey, it's been absolutely wonderful having you as a guest, Mohan, on the show. I thank you for giving me your time and walking me through what you do. I'm sure the audience will benefit from hearing from our experiences, and really appreciate you being on the show. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Smita. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, great catching up.
Absolutely.